My ex-wife had an affair with a man in his 20s while she was in her 40s. They met on a flight back home from her parents' place. They were seated next to each other, talked during the flight, and exchanged phone numbers. It turned out their families were somewhat connected socially, which made the conversation easier. He had just graduated and was headed to our city for an internship. I even met him at the airport when I picked her up. She said he was a nice young man and suggested we help him settle into the city so he wouldn't feel isolated. I agreed. We invited him over for meals on weekends, took him along on beach trips with our kids, and included him in some family activities. Sometimes my wife would go shopping with him or see a movie I wasn't interested in. On a few occasions, she took him to parties at her friends' places. I usually stayed home with the kids, and I genuinely appreciated not having to attend events I didn't enjoy. He seemed quiet and reserved, so I didn't suspect anything. What I didn't know at the time was that they were involved in a secret relationship. 6 months later, his internship ended and he returned to his hometown. I assumed that was the last we'd hear from him. However, they continued communicating, and he developed strong feelings for her, believing that eventually they might have a future together. Years passed, and we eventually divorced, though not because of the affair. If you've ever lived with someone who exhibits narcissistic behavior, you might understand the emotional toll. I had no idea about the cheating during the marriage. Only after the divorce did I learn the full extent of it, thanks to a few friends who came forward. She had been very skilled at hiding the truth, and I was far too trusting. I believed everything she said. One of the few mistakes she made, if it was a mistake, was mentioning her younger partner to her friends in a way that sounded more like boasting. One of them later shared the story with me. After our divorce, the young man tried to rekindle his connection with her. When that didn't go as he hoped, he sent me an email with compromising photos of her. There was no message, just images, some apparently taken in our home, others elsewhere. Some were suggestive, and others were clearly more intimate. I never responded to the email, nor did I bring it up with her, since we maintained contact for the sake of our children. I later learned this wasn't her only affair. Several people knew about her actions for years, but chose to stay silent. By then, I was emotionally detached from her, so I didn't really care about her behavior anymore. What truly hurt was realizing how much I believed in our relationship. I thought I had a partner for life, someone I could trust completely. That illusion, when shattered, was incredibly painful. I was angry, not so much at her, but at myself for missing the signs and trusting too easily. I worked hard for years, doing everything I could to support our family. And in return, I was betrayed by the person I trusted the most. It took years to recover from the financial consequences of the divorce. Emotionally, I never fully healed, but I learned to live with it. In some ways, the experience made me stronger and more self-aware. Our children grew up well and remained close to me, though their relationship with their mother became distant. I've stayed single since the divorce. I find it hard to trust again. People who call themselves friends still occasionally inform me about my ex-wife's current life. They likely think I care, but I honestly don't. It probably makes them feel better to talk about her while highlighting their own seemingly happy lives. In doing so, they revealed who my real friends are. As for my ex-wife, she seems to have continued her pattern, being in relationships while also seeing others. Perhaps her partners are aware and accepting of it. I heard that she and the younger man still meet occasionally. There were also rumors about her participating in unconventional relationships and about her sexuality. More recently, a mutual acquaintance mentioned she had been diagnosed with a personality disorder. Over time, life settled into something resembling normal. I focused on raising my children, rebuilding my finances, and rediscovering who I was outside of that marriage. It was a long process, grieving not just the relationship, but the person I thought I had been sharing my life with. The betrayal itself was painful, but the realization that I had trusted so deeply and been so completely wrong, that stayed with me. I began to notice how differently I moved through the world after the divorce. I became more observant, more cautious, less inclined to believe things at face value. I wasn't bitter, but I was guarded. Trust, once broken that deeply, doesn't return easily. Occasionally, people from our old social circle still tried to bring me updates about her, who she was seeing, what she was doing. At first, I listened. Maybe I still hoped for some kind of closure or understanding. But after a while, I realized it no longer mattered. Her life was no longer my concern, and mine had finally started to feel like my own again. I sometimes wonder what drove her to live the way she did. Maybe it was a need for attention, for validation. Maybe it was emptiness she couldn't name. But in the end, it's not something I'll ever fully understand, and I no longer feel the need to. What matters more to me now is the person I became through all of this. I've grown more patient, more resilient. I don't chase after people's approval like I used to. I don't tolerate dishonesty, even in small doses. I've developed a quiet kind of strength that I didn't have before, one born not out of pride, but out of surviving something I once thought would break me. I still haven't remarried, not because I'm incapable of love, but because I value peace more than I ever did. My home is quiet, my life is calm, and there's no chaos hiding behind closed doors. If someone comes along who respects that, who brings honesty and balance, maybe I'll be open to it. But I'm no longer waiting. I've stopped looking backward. My children are doing well. They've seen more than they should have, but I believe those experiences have shaped them into empathetic, grounded people. They still come to me for advice, for support, for comfort. That means more than anything. The bond we have, one built on honesty and consistency, is something I never had with their mother, but always hoped for with them. And that, in the end, is what truly matters. Life has its way of revealing people's true nature, not just others, but I own. I learned the hard way who I was, who she was, and who I no longer wanted to be. I wouldn't wish that kind of betrayal on anyone. But I also wouldn't trade the lessons it taught me. Some things are painful, but necessary. And sometimes the end of one chapter is the beginning of the version of yourself you were always meant to become. As the years went by, the emotional weight I had carried began to feel lighter. Not because I forgot, but because I learned to carry it differently. I stopped replaying every conversation, every moment where I had missed a sign or ignored a gut feeling. At some point, I realized that holding on to regret was like trying to change the past by bleeding in the present. It served no purpose. One of the most difficult parts of moving on was learning how to trust myself again, not just other people, but my own judgment, my ability to read a situation, to believe that I wouldn't be fooled so easily again. That took time, but slowly, through small decisions and quiet victories, I began to rebuild that inner trust. There were moments when loneliness would creep in. Holidays, milestones, days when the silence in the house felt louder than usual. But instead of trying to fill it with distractions or temporary connections, I let myself sit with it. There's a certain strength in learning how to be alone without feeling empty. That was new for me. Eventually, I began saying yes to small things again. Coffee with a colleague, dinner with an old friend, even the occasional conversation with someone new. I wasn't looking for love, but I wasn't closed off to it either. I just knew that if it ever came again, it would have to meet me where I was, grounded, honest, and peaceful. There was one woman I met at a bookstore, of all places. We reached for the same book, something simple, not even particularly profound, and laughed at the coincidence. We talked briefly. Nothing dramatic, just an easy exchange between two strangers who shared a quiet curiosity. I didn't ask for her number. I didn't need to. What mattered was that for the first time in a long while, I felt something stir. A sense that maybe, just maybe, I was ready to feel again. That moment wasn't about her. It was about me. About knowing that my heart, though scarred, still had the capacity to open. I still don't know what the future holds, but I do know who I am now. Someone who endured betrayal without becoming bitter. Someone who lost everything he thought was secure and still found strength in the rubble. I may have been blind once, but I'm wide awake now. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Sometimes the people we lose make room for the people we're meant to become. If there's anything I'd want someone to take from my story, it's that betrayal, no matter how deep, doesn't have to define you. Heartbreak doesn't mean you're broken beyond repair. You can lose the life you thought you were building, the person you trusted the most, and still find a version of yourself that's stronger, wiser, and more grounded than ever before. Pain has a way of refining us. It strips away illusions and forces us to confront what we ignored about others and about ourselves. It's not easy. Some days it feels like starting from nothing. But over time, piece by piece, you rebuild. And this time, you build differently, with clearer boundaries, with a deeper sense of self-worth, and with eyes open to the signs you once missed. You learn that forgiveness isn't always about the other person. It's about releasing yourself from the weight of resentment. You realize that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without letting it control you. And you come to understand that peace, true peace, is found not in what others give you, but in what you create within yourself. If you've been through something similar, if you've loved someone who didn't love you the same way, if you've been lied to, taken for granted, or made to feel small, know this: it wasn't your fault. And it doesn't have to be your ending. Let it be your beginning. Your past may have shaped you, but it doesn't have to define your future. There is strength in starting over. There is dignity in surviving. And there is freedom in finally choosing yourself. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel and leave a like. It really motivates me to keep going and create more stories like this for you.